Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast presented by Full Press Coverage. Check out fullpresscoverage.com for all sorts of great podcasts, articles, all tons of great sports content. You cannot go wrong if you're a sports fan and you want to head to fullpresscoverage.com. And you can find our podcast wherever podcasts are found. You know where they are at this point. It's 2021. I shouldn't have to tell you all the places podcasts are. It's right there on your phone. They're online. They're probably in your car at this point. You can find them. So just search the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, and you will be pleasantly surprised if you haven't seen it already. Sap, happy Friday to you. It is the nicest day of the year of 2021 in New England. Are you enjoying it?
Yeah, it's a great day, Jet. It's like low to mid 70s, got the shorts out, the golf shirt out. I don't golf, but I wear a golf shirt when it's nice weather like this. So it feels like spring is finally sprung, and that means we're going to be wrapping up the NBA regular season, then go to the play-in tournament and go to the playoffs. So it's going to be a fun 2 months as we look to see who we crown as the next champion of the NBA, LA Lakers. Excuse me, I just had to clear my throat.
No, that doesn't sound right. That sounds bad. You should get that looked at. Around this time, normally we would be in the second round of the playoffs, or towards the end
wrapping
of the
up
first?
The second round. Yeah, exactly. And then usually the conference finals start around Memorial Day, and then the NBA finals start around the 7th or 8th of June. But because we didn't start the season until December 22nd, we're about 5 weeks behind. But this should be fun. This will carry us into July. And then after that, you've got football training camps open. So we don't have to get bogged down with too much baseball.
Oh, thank God. I mean, because we talked about this on another podcast, how difficult it is to try to do sports radio or sports talk in the middle of the summer, typically, right around the baseball all-star game, because there's just absolutely nothing going on. So with the NBA being pushed a little bit later due to the late start time of the season, we don't have to deal with just baseball, which, you and I like baseball. I know it was your favorite sport, but it's not like there's a lot of breaking news all the time in baseball. I think if this was a baseball show, Sap, it would be a lot more difficult to listen to.
Yeah, name the greatest first baseman in Major League Baseball history. First is Lou Gehrig, and then Albert Pujols, and then let the debates begin. Yeah, that would be half of the shows we do. We do some of that stuff here, comparing great players from before and today and, all those different scenarios. But, yeah, there's more to talk about in the NBA because the characters involved are just that much more interesting than baseball players, and it's off season in the NBA is fascinating as well, whereas that used to be where baseball got a lot of traction, the hot stove league, but that almost doesn't exist. Free agents don't sign until training camp starts, whereas in basketball, as soon as we get to the offseason, there's a flurry of signings, which makes the sport, essentially a 12-month-a-year sport like the NFL. Those two leagues get the idea and understand that it's important to be involved and to be being talked about, whether it be on national TV or national radio. The NBA and the NFL understand that.
Yeah, the NBA and the NFL obviously, I think, present the most exciting products in sports in terms of the stuff that goes around outside of the actual game itself.
Right.
I am obviously a basketball fanatic, and so I love watching the individual games too, but I could see how there's in a typical season, there's 82 of them. It's hard to follow every single one, but the NBA does provide for great drama. And, I think that's in part because, they allow the players to have a personality, unlike baseball, where players have virtually no personality. And it's hard to actually know anything about an individual player. So what do you, if you're rooting for a player in baseball, what do you like about them? That they hit home runs, they steal bases. There's nothing else there. It's very it's all surface level stuff, I feel like. And in basketball, I mean, I know a lot about LeBron James, more than I care to.
Yeah, I mean, Mike Trout's the LeBron James of baseball in terms of being the best player in the sport for the last 7-8 years, right? He is going to become an all-time great. In another 5 years, his numbers are going to be stacking up against the all-time greats. He's one of the best players I've ever seen. We know nothing about Mike Trout. He's coming to Fenway Park this weekend, and there's really no excitement. I saw Mike Trout play a couple of years ago at Fenway Park. He's one of my favorite players. I went to 2 of the games. He went 1 for 9 in those 2 games, and there may have been 3 or 4 balls hit the center field. So you don't get to enjoy this extremely talented player. Baseball, you have to view every day to kind of cobble together all of what a player can do. Whereas in basketball, I think around the same time I went to see Steph Curry and Kevin Durant play the Celtics at the Garden, and it was fascinating watching those two all-time greats. The basketball players deliver because it's just the nature of the game. Baseball, you get up once every 9 at-bats, and then you get pitched around. So, Mike Trout comes up in the first inning. You may not see him again until the fourth, and he could be intentionally walked in the fourth, and you don't see him again until the sixth, and by then you're fatigued from what's been going on. The NFL and the NBA get it that they promote their sport nationally. Those are national sports, right? Like I can be a LeBron James fan here in Boston and follow the Lakers. You can pick a team from out of town if you so choose, although you're a Celtics fan. Where is hockey, you tend to be a Bruins fan if you're in Boston. And if you're a baseball fan, you tend to be a Red Sox fan because that's the team you see the most. The NFL and the NBA, you can be a fan of any team and follow them, through the dish. You can watch every NFL game. Look, I'm a Packers fan up until Aaron Rodgers gets traded at some point, but the Packers are on almost every week, so I can follow them. Whereas if you have a favorite baseball team, it's not that easy to follow. So the NBA and NFL being national brands make them more exciting.
Right, and the NBA and I think the NFL too, to a little bit of a lesser degree, have done a great job of utilizing social media to promote their sport. Baseball, especially in the first 5-6 years of Twitter, was so litigious with all their highlights. Like if you posted a baseball highlight, MLB would come after you and take it down, which was in retrospect very stupid. The NBA and the NFL is like, I don't care if you have 6 followers or 6 million followers. Like, yeah, share our content, share our highlights. Please, it helps grow the sport. That's how people consume sports now, especially younger people, is they watch highlights on social media. And the MLB did themselves no favors, basically being the only place you could watch highlight was on their Twitter page versus the NBA. I mean, there's millions of Twitter accounts that just tweet NBA content, Sap. And, and a lot of them are good and do it quickly. So you can see the highlights almost immediately after they happen. So the NBA has done a great job of adapting to social media to help promote their sport. And baseball, they're doing better now, but it really took them way too long to get going.
Look at someone like Jared Carrabis, and I'm a big fan of Jared Carrabis. I think he's fantastic at what he does. Works for Barstool. I'm not always a fan of Barstool, but I think he is so good at what he does. He loves baseball. I don't know of anybody that loves baseball more than Jared. And yet Major League Baseball has been slow to embrace him. He could be the commissioner of the sport, and I think it would benefit baseball. That's how much he loves and promotes the sport. Embrace that guy. Don't turn him away because he's with Barstool. The NBA, more than any other league, embraces everybody. I mean, I think we could reach out and probably get Commissioner Silver on here. It wouldn't surprise me. We share the same birthday. He's a little older than me, but we're both born on April 25th. So there you go. It could be that. Maybe we'll get Al Pacino on as well. He was born on April 25th. And how's another one? Tim Duncan, born on my birthday. I can say that because I'm older than Tim Duncan. But the NBA has always been like that, Jet. When I first broke into this business in the early 80s, the Celtics were so accommodating. They were fantastic to me, as were the Patriots. The Red Sox, I was persona non grata, and I never understood it. As I grew older, I kind of understood that the BBWAA runs the press box, so you can't get into the press box. God forbid you wear shorts in the press box, you get scolded. But the other sports embrace different types of media, not just the classical print media, which is dying right now. And I think that's why you've seen the NFL grow more than any other sport. And basketball is a close second as far as the growth over the last 40 years, while baseball has diminished over the last 40 years.
Why do they care if you wore shorts in the press box?
It's just the BBWAA is got a different set of rules. I remember one time,
like the Met Gala in there.
Pretty much. I mean, it's just a weird setup. They run everything. I remember one time I was on the field, and the Red Sox would give me field passes. We'd set up and do interviews there, and then they'd give us like 3 tickets down the right field grandstand. We could never go into the press box. And I was on the field before the game interviewing mostly the opposition players because they were much friendlier than the Red Sox back then. I mean, like I wouldn't dare go up to Carl Yastrzemski or Dwight Evans and ask them for an interview. They'd probably spit at me. But I would get like Paul Molitor, an all-time great player, or Robin Yount or I remember one time I went to Montreal, and the Montreal Expos and the LA Dodgers treated me great, got all the players that I asked for to interview. And I remember someone coming down to the field asking me if I wanted to interview Willie Mays. And I'm like, is this a joke? Like Willie Mays, like the greatest player ever? And they
Willie
said, yeah,
Mays, the
Willie Mays.
groundskeeper.
No, yeah, right. I thought it was a different Willie Mays. There was a Willie May that actually, was tied into the Celtics. You probably remember Willie would be the guy in the stands.
Coach Willie May.
Coach Willie May, one of my favorite people I've ever met in the business. I'm like, that Willie May I know. I don't need permission to interview him. No, they said Willie Mays. I said, of course. Like, don't even ask. Where is he? I can't wait to do this. And the Red Sox shot it down. They didn't want him on the field. I'm like, this is the greatest ball player ever, and he can't get on the field because the Red Sox, didn't want that to happen. It just probably because maybe Willie Mays would tell stories about how racist the Red Sox were when he was coming up in Major League Baseball. Who knows? But that's baseball. Embrace Jared Carrabis because he does more for that sport than anyone. Basketball and football get it, especially basketball. Basketball's always been accommodating to all different types of media. The players are available, and most importantly, the organizations. Jeff Twist, who's been with the Celtics for 40 years,
forever, yeah,
was accommodating to me in 1981 when I first started showing up. He was fantastic, and he still is.
Yeah, it goes to what we were saying the other day. Celtics don't fire people or get rid of them.
No, and they should never fire Jeff. He's a 1 in a million guy. He's fantastic at what he does.
Yeah, he's worked there for a lot. Rich Gotham's worked for the team in a similar capacity for a long time as well.
Hold on to the good guys. They, you should be rewarded for being really good at your job. And Jeff and Rich are both outstanding.
So, yeah, you said the NBA embraces, all types of people, and I agree with that. And, some teams even embrace different types of people, like fair weather fans, like the Miami Heat, pro-transition. Sap, the Heat right now, no pun intended, are setting the league on fire, the hottest team in the NBA. Pick your analogy there. They have won 7 of their last 8 games. And actually 9 of their last 10, and are right now the 5 seed. They've moved up to the 5, all the way to the 5 seed in the Eastern Conference, whereas a week ago they were at the 7-8 spot with the Celtics. I mean, they've really surged here down the stretch, including 2 wins over the Celtics. And as it stands, they have the tiebreaker over the Knicks at the same record, 39-31, which puts the Knicks at 6. The Heat at 5, and to the surprise of everybody, the Atlanta Hawks are at 4. Can Miami, who were the representatives of the Eastern Conference in the finals last year, can they make an actual run at this? Our friend Kendrick Perkins has them as a legitimate title contender. Do you buy that at all?
I do. After watching them against the Celtics, those games were not as close as the scores would indicate. They manhandled the Celtics, which is no great accomplishment considering how the Celtics apparently have thrown in the towel and were shorthanded in those games. But even if Jaylen Brown played, Miami was going to beat them no matter what. They were so impressive last night against Philadelphia. Now, if Miami's the 4 or 5 seed, they would play either the Knicks or Atlanta in the first round. I think they're better than those 2 teams. If they win that series, then they'd be matched up against Philadelphia. I don't think Philadelphia would want to play them in a second-round series because they're peaking at the right time, the Miami Heat are. They're 32-17 over their last 49 games. That's really good. They got off to a slow start because they had a very short offseason. They ended up going to the finals last year, a 71-day gap between the end of last season and the beginning of this season. So they weren't quite themselves to start the season, started off 7-14, but since then they've been playing outstanding basketball, and they have a mentality that scares teams. They're not about necessarily upper level talent or finesse. They're about culture, and they play extremely hard. Their best player is Jimmy Butler. He sets the tone. Heck, last night, Udonis Haslem came into the game and got ejected after 3 minutes, made his debut. Of the year, 40-year-old Udonis Haslem, who, by the way, is 3 years younger than Tom Brady. I just throw that in there. Shows you how old Tom Brady is and how great Tom Brady still is. But that's their culture. And the thing about the Heat, it starts from the top with Pat Riley. It goes to Eric Spoelstra, Jimmy Butler. But then all their other players understand their roles, right? I mean, whether it's Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero, guys who maybe on other teams would not be as good, but with the Heat, they understand their roles and they follow that. And I think they could be a real pain in the ass in the playoffs. Will they get back to the finals? I wouldn't say so, because Brooklyn's more talented. Philadelphia's more talented. I don't know about Milwaukee, because they beat Milwaukee last year in 5 games. I think the Bucks are better this year than they were last year, although they've not been playing that well the last week or two, especially on the defensive end. But that's a team you don't want to face, is the Miami Heat, because they're going to bring it every single night. They could scare some teams. I mean, they may not win the second round series against whoever, but they'd take it to 6 or 7 games and scare the hell out of you.
Yeah, they've done exactly what I was hoping the Celtics would do, which is,
Right.
surge towards the end and get into that 4 or 5 spot, because that's the only spot that realistically, gives you a pretty good chance to get out of the first round. I still think that Philadelphia, Brooklyn, and Milwaukee are better than Miami, and I think Miami, it was a large product of the bubble that they were in last year. They're still, are relying on guys like Hero and Duncan Robinson. They're terrific shooters, but they are somewhat limited defensively, especially Duncan Robinson, who's horrible defensively. But, I mean, he makes up for it with his shooting. So I do think that there's some degree of maybe the Heat aren't going to catch you by surprise like they did last year anymore.
But Eric Spoelstra is such a great coach that sometimes they'll come out in a 1-3-1 zone or 2-1-2 zone. Last night I saw them in a 2-3 zone, and it startles some teams, because not a lot of NBA teams do that and execute it. So with Duncan Robinson and Tyler Hero not being high-level defensive players, Spoelstra masked that by going to a zone defense, because then he does have elite defenders in Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. Yeah. So that's how he works that. He's a fabulous coach. I mean, we know he won back-to-back titles, and it was LeBron, Wade, Bosh. We get all that. But since then, he's proven time and time again that he's one of the 4 or 5 best coaches in this league. Just look at what Miami did last year, and they seem to be gearing up for a similar run this year.
Right, and LeBron didn't want him, Sap. So what's that say about LeBron?
LeBron makes mistakes. He wanted Pat Riley to come down from the front office and coach the team, and Riley said, no, this is our coach. And Riley stood by him. It was a rocky relationship between Pat Riley and LeBron James. Even though they won 2 titles in 4 years. It ended poorly. Yeah, it was Riley. When Riley first started coaching back in the 80s with the Lakers, they were a finesse team, right? They had Kareem and Magic and Worthy. And in the 84 finals, they got beat up by the Celtics. I think from that point forward, Riley said, we're never going to get beat up again. He coined the phrase, no rebounds, no rings. He tried to foster a tougher mentality, even with the Lakers, although they had such high-end talent that they could kind of plow through that. But still, they became a physically and mentally tough team. Then, of course, when he went to New York, he built essentially a football team. And the same thing with the Miami Heat. And right now, he likes that tough guy image. And he's got his team right now. And like you said, Hero and Robinson are not elite defenders, but they kind of cover up for them by playing zone and having those great defenders like Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. I enjoy watching them, because with the Miami Heat, their whole is greater than the sum of their parts, whereas with the Celtics, it's the complete opposite. The whole is less than the sum of their parts. Yeah. And there's nothing worse in sports than underachieving, and nothing more exciting to watch than a team that somewhat overachieves like the Heat did last year and appear to be doing right now.
Yeah, I still don't see them as legitimate finals contenders. I think that Milwaukee is better than they were last year, and probably figured out if they play Miami, which at this point seems like they unlikely that they would match up with Miami unless it's in the conference finals, which so Miami would have to get through.
Or if Miami's the 6th seed, if that happens, then they play Milwaukee in the first round. And again, there's a lot that can happen over this weekend. It's going to be fascinating as we end the regular season to see where the seeds are and who's going to be in that play-in tournament.
That's true. Yeah, if they're the 6th seed, then they would play Miami. That Miami would play Milwaukee in the first round, which would be an awesome first round series, and one that Milwaukee doesn't want. But I do look at the top 3 teams, and if Miami does play zone, I do look at all those teams that have zone busting guys. Like you can't play. First of all, you can't play zone against the Nets. I mean, good Lord, they'll score 160 points.
That'd be scary, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Embiid, you can't play a zone against him because he's so tall. You just lob it up to him. I mean, he breaks his zone immediately. And I thought Milwaukee would be better last year against the zone, they built that wall effectively against Giannis, but now they have a little bit more of a well-rounded team than they did last year.
But Spoelstra changes defenses. He
He
won't
does.
run a zone for like a whole quarter. He'll do it for 2 possessions, then go back to man, then throw a different type of zone. Like he's like a defensive coordinator in football, and we've seen Bill Belichick do this for over 20 years, where there's that amoeba defense where you have 2 down linemen and 9 guys at the line of the scrimmage standing. Like it totally confuses the quarterback, and I think that's what Spoelstra does a really good job at. And Riley, I don't know if he's necessarily involved in coaching the team. That's in his DNA, is defense. So, they've got a defensive mentality from the top on down. And again, when your best player enjoys playing defense, that sets the tone for the entire team. We saw, especially early this year, when LeBron James was engaged defensively, it's turned out that the Lakers are the best defensive team in basketball because you look and see your best player playing defense. If you're a average player, a role player, whatever, you look and say, well, if that guy's busting his ass on defense, I got to do the same thing. Michael Jordan did that for, a decade, and it just filtered through the rest of that roster.
Yeah, the roster is made up of really interesting pieces. If there's ever a 3-and-D roster, this is it. They have a lot of those types of guys on the team, either guys who can shoot threes and play defense, guys who could just play defense, or guys who could just shoot threes. They have a lot of those. And, that's sort of, we talked about this when we were talking about the tournament. The 3-point shot is the great equalizer, amongst a team you might be overmatched by, and the Heat shoot threes really, really well. They have a bunch of them. I mean, Jimmy Butler's their best player, and he's probably their worst 3-point shooter. So that obviously could present the problem. If they get hot like they did, they were on fire from 3 in the bubble last year. I mean, they just could not miss. And if that happens, then, all bets are off. I happen to like Milwaukee, Philadelphia, and Brooklyn better, but if Miami's shooting threes at an insane clip, it doesn't really matter how much I like a team. It's like I just said, it's sort of the great equalizer of talent.
Right. I mean, exactly. And it's like having a power hitting lineup in baseball. Maybe you don't hit for average, you don't walk a lot, but you've got 3 or 4 guys that can change a game with one swing of the bat, and that can alter a series. Also, how those 3 top teams in the East defend the 3 is so important. Brooklyn can score 135, 140 points without breaking a sweat, especially once they get Harden, Durant, and Kyrie Irving together. Lord knows what they can do, although the playoffs will be different. It's not as easy to score as it is in the playoffs. The officials oftentimes will swallow the whistle, and the teams get more physical on the defensive end. But we know Milwaukee and Philadelphia can defend the 3, especially Milwaukee because of their length. You have a player like Drew Holiday. You've got a player like Giannis who can go out and challenge shooters. He's that good defensively that could be a problem for Miami. But Miami toyed with them last year, beat them in 5 games in the second round. But that Milwaukee team was not engaged. They never really got going in the bubble, and this year is going to be different. So imagine in the East if you had Miami as a 6 seed playing Milwaukee as a 3 seed. In the West, you had the Lakers as a 6 seed playing the Clippers as a 3 seed. Man, those would be all-time great first-round matchups.
Yeah, and the thing that I guess that you could like the most about Miami, if you're going to buy into them, is they have a lot of those sort of like veteran tough guys on their team. Butler, Ariza, Iguodala. Those guys are all bringing an edge to the table. I don't really consider Haslam as a player on the team. But yeah,
he's the mascot at this point, right? That was the first game he played all year was last night.
Yeah, why did they wait that long to play him? They didn't blow anybody out in that whole.
I would assume, yeah, you want to throw him out there in a blowout, right? Or when you're bitch slapping the Celtics back-to-back games, throw him out there as a victory cigar. He's 40. He's been there forever.
It is odd to just have him on the end of the bench. Why not just hire him as a coach instead?
Pretty much. Although there's a little different dynamic, though, I think. So he can kind of put forth that message from Riley and from Spoelstra while he's in uniform. I think that works
he's practicing? Better. I doubt it, right?
No one's practicing at this point.
That's true. No one is. But
the key with Miami, and he's really grown on me as a player, is Jimmy Butler. Like, there's a guy I continually watch and say, this guy knows how to play basketball. His numbers, look, he's averaging 21, 7, and 7 this year. Those are phenomenal numbers. We know what he does on the defensive end, but he's always finding ways to help his team. I mean, one of the games against the Celtics, in one of the blowouts. He scored 4 points in the first half. He took 2 shots. He realized he didn't need to shoot in the first half because Robinson and Hero were on fire and Adebayo was getting to the basket. And he was like, I get out of the way here. But he got 7 assists in the first half. He's grabbing rebounds. He's defending. He's doing everything to help them win. He really is a player that I enjoy watching because he's completely substance over style. In some ways, the anti-Russell Westbrook. I mean, Westbrook, again, I call him a spectacle. Like, it's exhausting to watch, and you appreciate the man's effort and the numbers he puts up. But Butler does it in a much more efficient way, and I think it leads more to winning.
Yeah, he in some ways reminds me of Marcus Smart, but Marcus Smart that's more under control, right? Because he's
way more skilled.
Yeah, way more skilled. I mean, he is. Well, they're both crap shooters. Actually, Smart's a little bit better.
Neither one's a great 3-point shooter.
But they will hit the occasional big three.
Yep.
Just Butler knows when to rein it in, and Smart doesn't. Also, Butler, is bigger.
Butler's 6'8", right? I mean, he's a strong guy.
No, I'm not saying Smart's on Butler's level. I'm just saying that they do remind me. The shooting and the defense remind me of each other because neither one's a good shooter. They're both awesome defenders. And they will hit a big three out of nowhere occasionally. Butler is a lot better of a shooter in a big moment than his numbers would indicate, on average. So, right, I mean, this season he's like a 20-something% 3-point shooter. It's terrible. But
he really takes threes.
I do trust him to hit a big one if I need a big one.
And the key thing with Butler is top 5 in free throw attempts, and he shoots in the 80s. So that's always a good thing to look at, especially down the stretch of a game. You can put the ball in his hands. He's your best player. If he gets fouled, he's most likely going to go to the line and nail the free throws. And then we saw in that game against the Celtics, although he didn't score much early, late when they needed a basket, they went to Jimmy Butler, when he put on his big boy pants and went to the basket. And he does it in a very calm, almost boring way. Right, it's almost a little like Kawhi Leonard, where you go at the end of the night, wow, he had 27 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists, and nothing was loud about his game, except in the end, his team won, and he was a big contributor.
Yeah, I do wonder, though, with Butler, how many years of not winning a championship on a particular team is he okay with before he blows the thing up? Because he's, an all-or-nothing sort of guy. I think last year he was really happy. This year, if they lose in the first round, which is obviously a possibility, and then say next year they don't reach the finals, I could see him blowing it up there because he's kind of crazy.
He is definitely crazy. And the thing is, in the Eastern Conference now, I don't think the Nets are going anywhere. They got 3 all-time great players that are all in their prime. I don't think that you can look at Durant, Harden, or Kyrie and say they're on the back 9 quite yet. I would say that Harden and Durant are entering the back 9, but because they're so efficient and they don't need to play with a ton of athleticism, they can be very efficient for the next 4 or 5 years. And Kyrie is right in his prime. Philly's got Embiid, who's a cheat code, Ben Simmons, and now they've got their organization straightened out. Milwaukee has Giannis. So, I mean, Miami can be a really good team for the next 3 or 4 years and maybe get as far as the second round. Last year was their opportunity because it was a weird year. Philly was all messed up. Milwaukee was not engaged, and Brooklyn had Durant and Kyrie, but they weren't playing. So that was the year for Miami. And they did get to the finals, and they did take the Lakers to 6 games. It was never really a series, but the only team that took the Lakers beyond 5 games was the Miami Heat, and they did it with some injuries. So, they're there, but it may be difficult for them to break through because the conference is so top-heavy at this point.
Yeah, so I still don't look at them as legitimate title contenders. I do think that they're a pain in the ass to play, and they're an interesting team, and they're certainly peaking at the right time. I'm going to stick with that big 3 in the East and disagree with our friend Kendrick Perkins that they're legitimate. So the Heat, a very interesting team to keep an eye on now as the season is about to wrap up, the regular season. And they're sort of the anti-Celtics, right? They've done things right towards the end of the season and actually look like a threat heading into the postseason, whereas the Celtics are doing the exact opposite. Sap, TNT is going to be covering a lot of these playoff games, and they just had a shakeup in their announcing booth. Chris Webber, a guy who you've stumped for the Hall of Fame, he's out at TNT. Replacing him is somebody who's already there, Reggie Miller. I think this is the right move. I think I like Chris Webber as a player. I've met him. I met him as a member of the media once or twice. Nice guy. But I think he's terrible on TNT. So I think no big loss for them. He's constantly messing up names, pronunciations. I don't think he adds anything. So this didn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, he belongs in the Hall of Fame. I'm adamant about that. There's been athletes over the years that I stumped for. In the NFL, it was Jerry Cramer, the great offensive lineman of the Green Bay Packers. Finally, he made it, which I was very happy about. Ron Santo, great third baseman for the Chicago Cubs. Unfortunately, he made it a year and a half, 2 years after he passed away, so he was never able to enjoy that accomplishment. I think Chris Webber will get in at some point. He was a great player at Michigan. I know they didn't win a national championship. They did get to 2 national championship games before losing, and I think he had a career in the NBA worthy of being a Hall of Famer. There may be pushback because there were some gambling allegations, but look, the NBA essentially lets any very good to great player into the Hall of Fame, so why not Chris Webber? Yeah, I think he's better suited to be a studio analyst than an in-game analyst. He's got a great personality. Like you said, you met him a few times and said he was a nice guy. He's very engaging from what I understand. Reggie Miller was doing the games with Kevin Harlan, which I like Kevin Harlan a lot. I think he does a great job with any sport he does.
Oh, yeah.
Marv Albert's the dean. He's still, he's the Vince Scully in baseball and Marv Albert in basketball. Those
not
are
allowed
the
to call nicknames.
Gold standard. Right. Yeah. I can't call the nicknames anymore. But Marv Albert
can't call those the Nick games, Sap. He got
the Nick
game.
Right. Yeah. Right. Because he was too critical. The next, I got to meet Marv Albert back in 1984, and he was a wonderful person. I was 21 years old breaking into the business. I'll never forget this. We were up in the press room at the old Garden. The Knicks were playing the Celtics in a playoff series, and I was they had one bathroom in the press room. So this was like 15, 20 minutes before the game. So everybody's lining up to go to the bathroom. I was the next person to go into the bathroom, and Marv Albert, such an unassuming, nice guy, he just got to the back of the line. And I just said, "Hey, Marv, go in front of me because you're doing like a live broadcast in 10 minutes. He goes,
right.
"Thank you so much." So he went in the bathroom. He came out. He thanked me. He didn't shake my hand. I didn't need him to shake my hand after coming out of the bathroom. I wasn't sure if he washed his hands or not. But later, after the game, we were in the Celtics locker room, and Marv Albert's always been one of the hardest working guys. He was, doing play-by-play for that playoff game. And then he was, with a remote crew in the locker room getting, interviews after the game. And we were both waiting for Dennis Johnson, and he let me go first. He said, "Well, again, thank you for what you did up in the press room. Why don't you interview DJ first, and I'll do it after."
Tip for tat.
Well, it's also just someone who gets it. Like that's what a human being does. Like he's not so self-centered that, I've got to get this interview because, we're on a time
so you don't think
constraint.
He's one of those people filling up plastic bags with gasoline in Tennessee?
No, right. Not Marv. No, not Marv. He's the greatest play-by-play guy in the history of basketball, in my opinion.
Yeah, I can see that.
But he's now 80. He's kind of losing his fastball a little bit, but he's still got the great voice. I mean, it's Marv Albert as soon as you hear him. And I think his son Kenny does a nice job. He's just, it's tough to replicate Dad, who's the best that's ever done it. But I don't know who else they will add into this TNT. I mean, obviously Barkley, Shaq, and Kenny Smith, they're in studio. Don't touch that with Ernie Johnson. That's the best pre and post game show in all of broadcasting. I also think Greg Anthony is part of TNT.
Occasionally, yeah, he is. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so he may elevate. He's
so is
pretty
Dwayne
good.
Wade.
Dwayne Wade, not so good. I like him
Candace
in studio
Parker.
more. Candace Parker's good. The problem is a lot of the former great players don't become great analysts because the game came naturally to them. They can't really explain how things are going on the court because they just were so great at it. Whereas the backup point guard becomes a great analyst because, he had to think the game through more so than the star player. Kenny Smith was a really good player. He wasn't Shaq or Chuck, but a really, really good player. So maybe it's Jim Jackson, I think, is also involved.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He's pretty good too. So,
they share
find
guys
someone.
with NBA TV too. And NBA TV has some good people on there as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think Mike Breen, Mark Jackson, and Van Gundy, that's the best team in all of basketball. I love watching those guys.
Yeah, they're fine. They're not bad. Van Gundy complains a lot about, back in my day, this and this. So
he's the cranky old guy. That's okay.
And Mark Jackson, I think, is just trying to angle for a head coaching job every game. He's very effusive in his praise over organizations.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think Weber is probably better for the in studio role. I agree with you. I think he's actually been pretty good at that when he's done that, filled in on TNT for Shaq or whoever. I just it's his color commentary. I just thought was he doesn't get the bare minimum. You need to pronounce the names right.
That would help. Yes, that does help. I know that as someone who mispronounces names occasionally, or confusing Luka Doncic for Nikola Jokic.
Yeah,
both will be on first team All NBA selections, I'm sure. But
you're not, doing a live broadcast
no.
during a game for TNT. So
no,
he's been there. I was surprised. I think he's been there for 13 years. So
wow.
almost since he retired, he immediately joined TNT. He'll find a job. Maybe he'll take over what Paul Pierce was doing on ESPN, because Paul Pierce is out of a job
He's
there.
no longer there. Yeah,
so,
I mean, he'll resurface because, again, like you said, you met him. He's a nice guy. He's engaging. He's good to look at. He's a good-looking guy.
Yeah.
It's not
name
like
recognition. People know
name
who
recognition
he is.
is used, and hopefully someday he'll be introduced as Hall of Famer Chris Webber.
Yeah, because we got a couple new guys going into the Hall of Fame over the weekend, Sap.
Yeah.
We talked about this class, so we're not going to get into it. Maybe we'll give some reaction on Monday a little bit, but we have obviously Kobe Bryant, Kevin Garnett, and Tim Duncan are the major highlights of this class this year. There's some other obviously notable people, but those are the big three, if you will. It's a remarkable class to have that level of star power heading into the Hall of Fame. Kobe Bryant's wife is going to speak, Vanessa Bryant, and Michael Jordan, as we know, is going to enshrine Kobe. So I'm sure it will be a very emotional night. I saw Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett are in town. They shared a private jet from their home in LA to Boston, and they will, I'm sure, get a limo to Springfield. There's no airport in Springfield, as far as I know. And
Hide the women and children. Paul Pierce is in town.
He is. Yeah. Well, he doesn't have to pay for a drink ever in this town. So
no, and Ray Allen's not going to be attending, apparently, right?
No, they've made sure they have security to ban him from the doors. Even though he's a member of the Hall of Fame, he's not allowed in on that night.
He can't get in that particular night.
So I'm glad to see Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett still thick as thieves. Hopefully Perk will be in attendance too. Maybe Big Baby.
Yeah.
Rondo might take a playoff game off or no, I guess they won't be in the playoffs at that point. He's free this weekend, right? Rondo could go if he wants to.
Yeah, the Clippers are playing. They've got their final game or two of the regular season, so
give him the night off. Let him go see his buddy get into the Hall of Fame.
Look, I remember when it was Paul Pierce night at the Garden a couple of years ago.
He came.
I remember it well because the Cavaliers came in here and blew out the Celtics.
Yeah, it was not a good game.
It was. I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. It was just after the Cavaliers made all these moves, and I'm like, LeBron just made it all work like he often does. But I saw Doc Rivers there, got to interview him at Paul Pierce night. I think Garnett was there. In fact, I know Garnett was there, and I think Rondo was there too. So everybody but Ray Allen.
Ray Allen, golfing.
It was golfing and certainly not eating a cheeseburger or hamburger because Ray Allen hasn't had one of those since like high school. But no, this class is probably the greatest class ever because you got Kobe and Tim Duncan, two of the 10 greatest players ever. And you got Kevin Garnett, who's top 20, top 25 player. But obviously the highlight will be Kobe Bryant. And almost get the feeling, Jet, that they should have just had a separate enshrinement for Kobe. Is that asking too much?
Yeah, it is because, they've never done that before. If they didn't do it for Jordan, they're not doing it for Kobe. But it'll take up the bulk of the proceedings.
Kobe was a different situation than Jordan. Yeah. This is all you're going to hear about and be reminded of, rightfully so, is Kobe. And it's perfect for Tim Duncan, who was always overshadowed by Kobe, Shaq.
I don't even know if he's showing up.
And if he does show up, he's probably going to be wearing something from Target, like, a pair of pants he'll be wearing khakis and a golf shirt.
It'll be like the Oscars when someone doesn't show up. Someone is Robert Horry accepts this award on Tim Duncan's behalf.
Yeah, because it's like not a big deal to Tim Duncan. It's like, okay, whatever. What's the Hall of Fame? I'm glad to be there.
I'll be watching because, the Jordan and Vanessa Bryant thing will be. I'm sure I'll cry because I'm a crier.
Sure.
I want to hear what Garnett says. I don't really give two craps what Isaiah Thomas says inducting Kevin Garnett, but I do want to hear what Garnett has to say. I think that it'll be a great basketball night, great night of celebrating some of the greatest players ever. So that is happening this weekend in Springfield. Again, Ray Allen, persona non grata. He is the only person not allowed in attendance. And a guy who is a Hall of Famer already, Sap, is actually getting an award named after him. Kareem Abdul Jabbar is getting the award called the Kareem Abdul Jabbar Justice Award. Is going to be named after Kareem. And what it's going to do is recognize a player every year who is making strides in the fight for social justice. Each team will nominate one player for consideration. From there, 5 finalists will be selected, and ultimately one winner every year of the new Kareem Abdul Jabbar Social Justice Award. This is completely on brand for what the NBA has positioned themselves as a very forward-thinking league that allows their players to speak up about issues that matter to them. Kareem Abdul Jabbar, not only one of the great social activists in the NBA, but one of the great social activists in probably the history of this country, honestly.
Absolutely, yeah.
And continues to do that. So a fitting honor. Bill Russell has a award named after him. And now Kareem has an award named after him as well. So I'm happy for Kareem. And I think that, honestly, knowing his personality, there's no award that he would rather bear his namesake than this.
Yeah, a lot like Bill Russell, he's more than just a basketball player. I've said this a million times. I think of all the great players in the history of basketball, the 3 smartest in terms of worldly, interested in more than just what took place on the basketball court. And I think LeBron eventually will join this group because that's part of his brand as much as anything. But to me, it's been Bill Russell, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. They were at the forefront of pushing backs against social injustice in the 60s when it wasn't necessarily popular. It led to them being disrespected.
It was dangerous, Sap. It was dangerous to their own, lives.
Absolutely. It was Kareem. It was Bill Russell. It was Jim Brown. Obviously, Tommy Smith and John Carlos from the Olympics in 1968. Muhammad Ali, probably more than anyone because he, wasn't able to fight for 2.5 years. Most of that being in his prime. Just think about what his boxing record would have looked like, although we're all in agreement that he's the greatest heavyweight ever, and it's either he or Sugar Ray Robinson is the greatest fighter ever. But it wasn't as popular as now. Now it's woke to be, someone who speaks out about social injustices. Look at Colin Kaepernick. Now, he hasn't been able to get back into the NFL, but he's made a lot of money and has built his brand on that. LeBron is a social justice warrior, and that's one of the reasons he's one of my favorite players. But Kareem was really at the forefront, and he was in college at the time. At the same time that Kareem was at UCLA, winning 3 national championships and also doing all of this, O.J. Simpson was winning a Heisman at USC, never got involved with this. And, that was his choice.
Did he say, I'm not black, I'm O.J.?
I'm O.J. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because O.J. was probably the first crossover athlete that was wildly popular. Like, I remember that was one of the first wildly popular athletes I can remember. Like, Bobby Orr was my boyhood idol growing up, but hockey is still a niche regional sport. With O.J., he was the first megastar, like, the Hertz commercials, everything. He became a movie star. Yeah, he was, he had that great smile, great looking guy and all that stuff. Went on to become a sportscaster. And then we know what happened after, or maybe didn't happen, but we kind of surmise what did happen. But he stayed away from that. Whereas Kareem, essentially the same age in the same city, decided, no, I'm going to speak up on this. And I think part of it was that Kareem got to play for John Wooden, who was a greater teacher than basketball player. And I get a basketball coach. I get basketball coaches are teachers, but the players that played for Wooden swear by him as a man, a mentor, more than they do even as a basketball coach, whether it's Bill Walton or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Now, again, you win 5 national championships with those 2 guys at center. I think a lot of people could have coached those teams, but he molded them as men
Yeah, what they win
more so
90
than
straight
basketball
games or
players.
something like that.
It was just, yeah. I mean, Kareem lost, I believe, one game in high school and college. That was it. And by his second year in the league, he was winning an NBA championship. So he was pretty good. So this is awesome for him because he's, again, someone who's really locked into what takes place in the world. We know that he'll write op-ed pieces for the Washington Post or the New York Times. And he's always been a very reserved guy. Like you said, knowing his personality, he's the opposite of, an attention seeker. I mean, he makes Tim Duncan look charismatic in that sense.
Yeah.
But this is great. This is really great. And we'll see who the first recipient will be. And I kind of hope it's someone that's not necessarily the most famous player in the league, right? Like you would think that as a LeBron James guy, I'd like to see him win that first award. But I think it'd be pretty cool if we found out that whoever, Jaylen Brown would be a perfect choice. I think he could win this in any other year too, because he's so young. But Jaylen Brown's someone that I really like and respect for this as well. But maybe even someone from like a not so popular team, like someone on OKC or
George Hill, remember,
Memphis,
led the whole boycott.
George Hill could be someone, right? Exactly. Someone that you'd say, oh, there's that guy. It's almost like the, Walter Payton Man of the Year. Oftentimes it's a quarterback or, JJ Watt or Eli Manning. It'd be nice to just maybe not have a superstar do it. Now, obviously, you get more attention if you give it to LeBron James now, but then he kind of overwhelms the award more so than it's being Kareem's award. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so
no, I get that.
Cool.
I think that makes sense.
Like George Hill would be a nice choice. Someone
I wouldn't give it to LeBron, especially in the first year of it. I wouldn't give it to LeBron.
It would just look rigged at that point, right? It's like,
it would look rigged, and it would look like the NBA is patting themselves on the back.
Right. And LeBron gets enough already and deserves it. But, let's see a player that's playing for the Atlanta Hawks who does a lot of stuff or whatever.
Or a team should use a 10-day contract on Colin Kaepernick and then give him the award, and that would really be a shot across the NFL's back.
Wow. I bet he could play basketball. A great athlete, 6'5". Yeah, I mean, why not the Celtics, right? They've thrown in the towel, the Celtics, so let's bring Colin Kaepernick here. He'd probably defend better than most of the guys on the Celtics.
Yeah, so I do think it's a great honor for Kareem, who, as I'm reading about him, met Dr. Martin Luther King as a 17-year-old. He was 17 when he first met him. That Ali Summit was in 1967. As we talked about him, Bill Russell, Jim Brown, tried to stop the being conscientious objectors to the Vietnam War, as well as trying to raise awareness for civil rights issues. I mean, we talk about the civil rights era like it was ancient history, and most of these guys are still alive. It's not like they're long gone. Kareem was active in the civil rights movement, and his he's still alive and kicking. He's not going anywhere.
No, Jim Brown is still alive.
Yeah, Bill Russell. I mean, these guys are
Bill Russell.
It's not ancient history. It's not World War I.
No, it's a little more than 50 years ago. It's 54 years ago. It was 1967. I was born in 1963. I don't remember it. I mean, I have a pretty good memory, but I don't necessarily remember 1967. But of course, like anyone else, I read it, studied it, and was so impressed that those athletes at that time spoke out, and I respect them immeasurably. And I've always respected Kareem because Kareem was a very shy guy and still is, I believe. And
someone who's 7'3".
Well, a lot of guys that are that size tend to be very reserved. Like Shaq was the outlier, 7'1", 325 pounds with a huge personality. Wilt had a huge personality, but I think Russell was more reserved, but still a strong leader. Kareem was really reserved. And I think that, at times it was almost like he wasn't comfortable with himself, but now I believe he is. And I think that's, what makes him such a fantastic player. And I'm glad this award is named after Kareem. I don't know if they'll give an award named after Wilt Chamberlain, like who slept with the most women.
Yeah,
something like that. Or maybe you give the scoring title to
the Wilt Chamberlain
Award. Although it gets confusing after a while, like the NHL has the Hart Trophy and the Conn Smythe Trophy and the Vezina. It's like, what do these all mean? You have to kind of go on Google to look them up. Whereas, the so-and-so won the scoring title. But yeah, maybe you have Wilt Chamberlain, won the Wilt Chamberlain Award as the league's leading scorer. We know the finals MVP named after Bill Russell. Although I don't think
Makes
Bill
sense.
Russell ever won a Finals MVP.
No, but he won the most finals.
He won the most championships. Out of the 11 that they won, he probably would have won 7 or 8.
Right.
He had some other good players with him for sure. Tommy Heinsohn, Kuzi, Havlicek. But yeah, in fact, the finals that Russell was in was in 1969. The Celtics beat the Lakers, and Jerry West was the Finals MVP on a losing team. The only time that's happened in NBA history. Should have happened in 2016. LeBron should have been the Finals MVP when they lost to Golden State. If that had gone 7 games, LeBron would have won the Finals MVP. Just want to put that in there, Jet, in case you'd forgotten.
Fair enough. So the winner of this award gets $100,000 for the charity of their choice. The other 4 finalists get $25,000 a piece for charity. Obviously, they're not going to just pocket the money. Not that $25,000 is particularly a lot of money to these guys, but they should also. I do like what the NFL does is that they put the Walter Payton Man of the Year insignia on the jersey if you win it. I think the NBA would do well to do a similar thing with maybe a silhouette of Kareem on the person who wins that.
Absolutely, good idea.
That way you're sort of always promoting, trying to be better and win that award, and then you have a reminder of the greatness of Kareem Abdul Jabbar on somebody's jersey. I think that the NFL, they don't do very many things right, especially when it comes to social justice or charity or whatever. They've picked some odd charities sometimes. But they do that Walter Payton Man of the Year award thing right, and they make it into a big deal because it is. They call it the biggest award of the season. I mean, most people, think that's a joke and just say it's the MVP. But the NFL, props it up as they should, and the NBA, I think, is trying to do something similar, and it's a great idea. And they couldn't have picked a better person to name it after. And that's coming from a Celtics fan.
Yep. No, I mean, I think Kareem's one of the most respected athletes in this country by far, and it's only grown over time. Because like we always say, when we have this debate, who's the greatest player of all time, Kareem has to be in that discussion. I think there's the Mount Rushmore of LeBron, Jordan, Russell, and Kareem. Then it goes to the likes of, obviously, Wilt and Magic and Bird, and those are the guys. But I think the top 4 are LeBron, Jordan, Russell, and Kareem. Those to me, they've separated themselves. It's just because they could do it on both ends of the floor, and Russell's the ultimate winner, and Kareem won 6 league MVPs and also won 6 titles and had the most unstoppable shot in the history of basketball. We know MJ and LeBron are the 2 most well-rounded players we've ever seen. I mean, they do everything. So that, to me, is where the discussion is, and sometimes people forget about Kareem because he didn't have a very outgoing personality, and kids didn't try to emulate his game. You don't show up to the playground and work on the sky hook because, it's the opposite of Steph Curry, who every young kid wants to be Steph Curry. And they
because it would get blocked if you're 5'8".
Right. And it's kind of that, Kareem was 7'2". Kids don't associate themselves with 7'2" people. Steph Curry's 6'3" and looks kind of like a kid himself.
Yeah. I'm interested to see who will win the award this year. I hope that the NBA continues to promote it, and because it is a really good idea. And so just another award, Sap, that you and I will have to predict for our big show on Monday when we're announcing our awards and first team, second team, third team, all defense, that sort of stuff. Again, that's a show.
I'm not going to go that deep into all defense, just first team all defense.
I'm doing fifth team all defense.
Yes. Marcus Smart will be on every single one of them.
Yeah, he will. Make sure you listen to that on Monday. But we will be back tomorrow on Saturday with a fresh edition of the podcast, talking about something we've wanted to talk about for a while, which is something Kendrick Perkins said, that it's harder to win an NBA championship than a Super Bowl title. We'll debate that. Also going to talk about who we'd like to see in a game of one-on-one, if we could pick any players to go up against each other. And Jerry West being upset with his former team, the Los Angeles Lakers. I'll explain why. Sap will get into that as well on Saturday, so make sure you listen for that. And again, Monday will be our big year-end awards show. We're not going anywhere. It's just a regular season awards. We'll be here throughout the playoffs, obviously. Mm-hmm. So make sure you listen to all of that. And so we will be back tomorrow. Thanks again to our presenting partner, Full Press Coverage. Check out their website, fullpresscoverage.com, for this and other great podcasts. We are the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. Find us wherever podcasts are found. Find us on YouTube at youtube.com/JetStryer if you want the visual presentation. Until tomorrow, see you, everybody.